So, if I could please have a quick raise of hands of who's used AI for work in any capacity. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. How many? No, drop. Keep your hands up if you have told your boss everything that you're doing with AI. Yeah, exactly. So we did a survey jointly with the DPW, and I'm going to show you those results of that survey that kind of shows the research in terms of adoption of AI into procurement. There's going to be a lot of data and slides. We're going to move through it pretty quickly. I'm going to start real quick, though, with the kind of a setting of the agenda of what's going on in the world today, not from just an AI perspective, but from an operations and services perspective. So what we are going through right now is a 5-stage move from services, which we used 25 years ago, kind of a staff aug mode, to technology-enabled services, which we all use, P2P systems and other types of platforms, to a platform-led solutions that were like Ariba and Coupa and those worlds. And we are now just starting an AI-led agentic set of services before we move into what's called services as a software, which is essentially the replacement of operations and services with software with minimal human impact. But the problem is when we announced this in September 24, we thought it was going to happen in 5 years. But the rate of technology and adoption by the technology vendors in this space shows it's going to move in about 2 years earlier. So let me walk you through what we're talking about here when we talk about services as software. First, it starts off with AI being completely autonomous versus SaaS being fairly static and services being people-driven. Next, we talk about customization and where there's some limited customization available in the SaaS models and labor-intensive areas in terms of services. But when you do it in AI and with the agentic solutions, it's fairly infinite in terms of your ability to use AI. Next, from a pricing perspective, you are all very familiar with how to price software, and you pay salaries or billing rates for services. But in the agentic world of services as software, what we're looking at is outcome-based pricing, generally speaking, in the market. And from an adaptability perspective, we're talking about a future where everything can move real time, where if there are tariffs today, you can have the models and everything update to run that. And if there's a different tariff this afternoon, you can do that as well. As we start thinking about the continuation of AI technology, we all were familiar with RPA technology. It was a tab twice, enter some data, tab twice, put your social security number in. It worked somewhat okay, but it didn't really succeed. Next, we are currently using a lot of Gen AI tools. It's the first set of technology that's available that can actually create content versus just enter data into Windows. And we are moving right now into an agentic AI world where the tools and models can understand your goals and actually move through your goals and inquire and figure out how you're going to get there. But what is coming up next in terms of technology, when you look at AGI and you think about the set of reasoning that is going to be available in the market in the coming years, the technology that's capable of doing that, you're talking about self-directed AI that can actually start creating and solving problems for you, and that's before we get to superintelligence. When we get to artificial superintelligence, we're talking about technology and capabilities that can actually outperform and outthink you, actually come up with problems and code solutions with minimal human interaction. So if you ask what's going on in this world as it relates to this technology, we asked organizations, so what are you going to do with this in terms of replacing operations, services, business processes, your services providers, right? And what we found quickly was that 6 out of 10 of you, or your organizations, and this is a survey that was done with 300 some odd enterprise decision makers, are looking to replace your people or outside services with technology, and 16% of you are well down that path. So why that's meaningful for you, if you're a procurement organization, that's you. And that is your business trying to make this happen. This market is going to be so big that if you think about it for a moment, we're at about a $2.5 trillion combined services and software market out there in the market, estimated to grow by 2035 to about $5.5 trillion. Moving forward, you're looking at a $1.5 trillion addressable market of services and software, eliminating, as you can see, largely the technology services in the market out there. What's not in this are the trillions of dollars of operational costs in your finance departments, your operations areas, your HR areas, the procurement area, all those areas are not in this data. And that's where you're looking at a significant impact to how you perform services within an organization, because services will be provided as software instead of just people. And so if you think about it real quick, and I asked ChatGPT to generate this has a direct impact to you and your organizations. So let's talk through some of the findings. I have 6 findings. This is the first finding, and then we'll wrap it up. The first point here is procurement is stuck in an AI pilot purgatory. When we talk about the types of challenges that you are all trying to solve in this world, you're talking about how hard is it to sell to you? And the salespeople and your organizations had some feedback, and this is from the sales side of the organization. And this is an audience, while it's fairly small, is actually made up of the booths that are out here, for example. And so that's a fairly large representative sample of these organizations. And what you are seeing is that the sales folks generally feel that you are very cynical and that you don't fully understand the value proposition. Now, I'm a 10-year CPO, Chief Procurement Officer. I know what I'm talking about in terms of this, and I understand we're all very, very cynical in terms of how we see things. And we really want to understand the value proposition. But the problem is that when you think about your maturity and where you are right now, we're just playing around. 70% of you are just tinkering. Only 30% of you are actually building value today. It's a significant opportunity for you all to start providing value to your business as well as to yourselves. It also speaks to the amount of work that is yet to be done in your organization. So when you hear predictions of what's going to happen in the future, it gives a sense of what's going to happen. Next year, when you look at the drivers behind why you're trying to make these investments, it's largely to make better decision making. 59, 60% of organizations are trying to figure out how to make better decisions. Next finding, dirty data, dead dreams. What are the biggest challenges in making AI work for procurement organizations? Data, data, and data. You have spent years and years and years trying to get your data in a space where you would like it to be, but the consequence of you building your P2P system different from your CLM system, different from your e-sourcing system, different from your financial budget system, not a single one of you probably has an API that calls your budget data and brings it into your strategic sourcing plan at all. So if you think about that for a moment, we have built this type of ecosystem because we saw these as independent processes, and we made point decisions around technology investments to make those processes better. That's not going to work in the new world because it has left itself with a variety of data in a variety of different places. So next finding here is AI is a co-pilot for most of you. It's not a replacement. But I'm going to challenge you, do you have enough imagination? It was just prompted by Brian earlier. So to what extent do you believe AI is going to be involved in your procurement processes going forward? That's a question for you to think about, right? Where is it going to be involved in your processes? And what we did is we laid out the number of the value chain processes within procurement, and we asked, to what degree there's no AI involvement, down to some, some minimal, and then some adoption, and some collaborative, and fully autonomous. And very few of you, maybe 5, 10% of you, actually believe that there's not going to be any. And then some of you are thinking, maybe about 10% of you are thinking that there's going to be some element of AI to be inside of your worlds. No doubt, there's a significant amount of you that believe that there's going to be AI as an advisor. You're thinking of it like a Clippy on the side or something to help you on the side. From an autonomous, when you start moving into the more collaborative areas in the autonomous space, you can see significant changes in how the data starts showing. You are looking at making AI investments in highly transactional areas, like P2P, for example, or orchestration. And that's your line of where you believe it's going to be more collaborative versus not. The sellers, on the other hand, have a much different view. They believe there's going to be a lot more opportunity. And I will tell you, they're closer to the technology than you are based upon your adoption curve. And this is where you are at right now. So you have a significant opportunity to start seeing your world a little differently, being more aggressive than you currently are. So in many cases, you don't need a co-pilot. There are a number of things that you could start thinking of in terms of modularizing your workflows, buying co-pilots, thinking about decision rights and having your people finally push the OK button at the very end of things, tracking savings in different particular ways, and maybe even, making logic very transparent to you. So when you expose logic, for example, through the transparency tools, you can get a good sense of where that is. So most procurement organizations are looking for a co-pilot. That's what you saw in the previous data right here. That's where you are kind of pausing where you are right now. The problem is that your new world can look very different. On the left-hand side is, I'm not trying to say this is the perfect model. I'm not going to try to make a perfect model of P2P. It's pretty complicated, so I kept it dumbed down. But why would you need any of this technology on the left-hand side if you can stick an agent in front that could take your supplier calls, take your stakeholders' calls, take their chats, take their emails, take their invoices, take their banking information, take their onboarding forms. You don't need to do any of that anymore, and then you need to start rethinking about your investments in your P2P technologies and all of your onboarding applications, because a simple agent can solve a lot of your problems, and that's a completely redo of all of your technology, not using screens and widgets and how data comes through things, but through applying more imagination, you can actually redo and think about your world in the future. So let's go to the next finding then. So the sellers are selling upstream, but buyers want downstream technology, and I'm going to get into this in a little bit more detail now. So you have different perspectives about where the sense of value is from the folks who are selling the technology and providing services than actually using them. Buyers want help in transactional spaces, which is remarkable because anybody knows as a CPO, you're probably screaming right now and thinking, that's not how I deliver value. I don't get measured on these things. I get measured by savings. But this is what buyers are saying loudly, is that procurement orchestration and transactional procurement is largely the places where they see the value. In fact, orchestration tools only are a symptom of their broken processes inside. All of your investments into orchestration tools are because your processes are so complicated right now, you needed a way to automate them or put them through screens, widgets, and screens. If you actually solved all the departments of no, N-O, in your worlds, we're trying to slow down the business of buying things because they never say no, right? They always want to say or threaten to say no. You could move much quicker and help your business faster and be more customer-facing for your business. If you think about it from a seller perspective, they have a better view of where the value is. Think about that for a moment. And you well know that strategic sourcing, contract negotiations, category management are ways you really impact your bottom line for your organizations. So going on to the next point here, and I have never seen an industry that has this much disappointment in its existing technology. And here's the slide, if you can just kind of look at it right here. 50% of you believe your existing technology is it's either too soon to tell, it's fell far short of expectations, or it's only kind of like, it's not even partial, in fact. If these were employees, you would fire them. On the flip side, you know, how many of these, 25% of you, 20% of you actually believe that you're meeting your actual value? It's remarkable that you believe that your technology is performing this poorly. And this is a statement around the legacy suppliers and technology and service providers in this space that has left you here, but it's also because you have architected this result, because you've never changed your business practices and looked at and cleaned up your data. Sellers, you know, this is actually, you know, if you think about it right now, many of you feel that way. That's why you're here looking at all the different companies that offer advancements in technology to make your worlds better than they are today. But if you think about it from the seller's perspective and people who make the technology, they're actually thinking, hey, you know, we're not doing so bad overall, but I will have to point out that someone still thinks that P2P runs terrifically well, and as a former CPO and as many of your procurement folks out there, I don't think you think so, but it does speak to maybe a blind spot in a technology world. So there's plenty of opportunity here from the sellers to actually start thinking about where buyers want to have values, but also adding some innovation in that space. There is a tug of war that is going on inside of the people making the technology that you're using. And I want to give you all a glimmer into that, because what's going on there is coming out in your technology that you're getting and using. So looking at this real quick, and we asked the question, you know, what's going on in your worlds in terms of your biggest challenges? And a lot of you are just trying to balance new feature capabilities with check-the-box capabilities. Well, you know, Zip's got this, you know, someone else has got this, and we kind of just click the buttons, and we try to get all those features on par while we're trying to do some new features. And that race to kind of average is not helping the industry. What the industry needs is really thoughtful, new ways of doing business, and that's going to be driven by you all driving some of this into the technology areas. If you think about the most effective way to actually add AI, and we asked the technology companies how to add it, and this is really amazing. integrating AI features. 74% of service providers or technology providers feel that integrating AI into their existing workflows is the solution. But I'd argue that's an imagination gap, because that's doing the same processes better. That's adding some AI capabilities to an existing workflow or a capability. It's not really extending and creating new capabilities. And as you've heard already on the stage today, and as you're going to see out there, and what you're going to see is your jobs are being replaced as well. It's an excellent opportunity to start being far more creative with what you want and demand more of what you need to change your business results. Let me go then to my last set of findings in our report. And by the way, this report will be issued this summer in conjunction with DPW. Let's talk about talent. So how prepared is your organization? And you look at that right there, and it's, lost in the AI jungle is 20%, and 49% are we're kind of like figuring it out, right? 70% of you are trying to figure it out right now, essentially, which means you are not prepared for what's about to happen. From a procurement roles and where you think the role of procurement and your roles in your organizations are going to be, there's a significant shift to new hybrid roles, more strategic capabilities. You are starting to think about your organization and how you can get more thinking and strategy out of your employees and how technology can help you with that. But will AI shift or reduce procurement headcount? Most of you think, just like I said, 56% feel like it's going to start shifting to areas that are going to make your existing staff more strategic. But when you look at your actual skills and what you're doing to invest with everything you see outside here, which is crazy, 60, 70% of organizations have made almost no investment in their people. And they're all about to use this new technology. And it's a shame that we as buyer communities have not embraced this technology and used it instead of creating rules about when you can use it and how you can use it using company data. I get the issues, but this is remarkable and will only position your people for some bad outcomes in the future versus career advancement and growth. So let me just end this with a couple points here. Services software is inevitable. You're only looking at agentic today. Tomorrow you'll be talking about the state of compute that is so fast it can outthink you and will solve problems. And how are you going to work through that? Next, you need to be bold. You need to go beyond your existing processes and have more imagination. Third, new tech is only going to be as good as the crappy data you sit in there. For 25 years, we've been building data in these legacy applications. It's time for you to start pulling your data together, and that probably means changing your processes. That way you can leave behind good data that's useful. Fourth, orchestration and process flows that just move your transactions through are just process areas. Your customers really don't care. What they really care about is spending less and you aligning to their strategic objectives. And so think about whether you're going to make investments in more transactional areas or more strategic areas that are going to drive better value for your organization. And lastly, the future is going to look very much like Dr. Eloise said. There will be individuals, there will be professionals, and they're going to have co-pilots on their side, and they'll be able to manage 5, 10 times more spend than they do today. So think about that in the future as your folks are starting to play these new roles. Otherwise, the world's going to change for you. So I invite you all to connect, and we will be releasing this jointly with DPW in the summer, and thank you very much for your time.